Alrighty, so let's talk about how do you play Victoria 3 on Excel. So what am I talking about here? Essentially, in Victoria 3, when you build something, right? Say if I build what do you say? Say if I build an emulation plan, I have a lot of things I actually need to build to make sure that everything is balanced out, right? Like let's say shipyard, because that thing doesn't really show. So like when I build a shipyard, I will have to build a number of things. I need to build steel, I need to build engine, I need to build coal. And when I build steel, I also need to build iron, I also need to build explosive and to for my iron mines to mine the steel, right? When I build engine, I need to build more steel, and when I build coal, I need to build tools, I need to build explosives, right? All that kind of stuff. So essentially, every time you want to actually build something, you need to queue up not just the industries that you want to build. You also need to queue up a bunch of other stuff. And if you do it, and if you do not do it and if you do not plan things out, you will suffer from like a shortage or excess of industrial goods. So essentially, and that can be really really unhealthy for your economy. When you have a shortage of industrial goods, when your industrial goods are expensive, you actually lose a chunk of your GDP. So as we can see here, I have simulated a scenario where if any of our goods are expensive, and honestly, it will have a pretty big impact on our GDP and our GDP per industry as well. So essentially, you want to make sure that your GDP is balanced most of the time, so your economy is kept in a healthy state. So how do we do that? How do we calculate how many industries do we need of each type? Well, the easy way to do it is, well, just through calculation by hand, right? I know how much steel does my engine take. So when I build a steel, I build like two. When I build an engine industry, I build two steel industries, right? Easy. However, once production gets complicated, electricity also eats engine as well. So now you are going back and forth, back and forth. It becomes hard to actually balance things out. So now we have this Excel. This Excel will do the work for us. Essentially, what it does is that if I say in my industry tab, I take a look, I need 787 engines, right? I come over here, I go to the lacking, I input 787 here, I go to the engine row, and then I find out, okay, so to build 787 engines, I need to build up, where is it? I need to build 2.6 iron mines, two coal industries, and sulfur, 0.3 sulfur, 0.14 oil, 0.4 wood, 7.1 engine industries, 2.8 electricity, like essentially power plants, and 0.9 tools, 2 steel, and 0.4 explosive, which is essentially chemical plants. This is essentially on this row, it will tell us everything that I need to build. Up here is the type of industries that I need to build. Well, that's that. Super easy, right? So how do we actually make this Excel? Well, it's to start off, you need to collect some raw data first. Essentially, you need to input. You need to first list out all your inputs and outputs, like all your goods essentially. I prefer to do it through, like, by listing my resources first. So the 4 mines, the oil, rubber, wood, hardwood, and then I start listing industrial goods like engine, electricity, steel, explosive, and fertilizers. And then I list just everything else. Everything red, like everything after the initial doesn't really matter. I just make sure I list out the industrial goods earlier, so it's a bit easier for me to see. And essentially you list the table like this, where you have industrial goods in one row, and then you have all the other goods in another row. And after that, what you do is that you will just input on each row the inputs and outputs of the industry. As you can see here, I have a minus 90 for iron. What does that mean? That means the iron mine will produce 90 iron, right? And it will consume 5 oil. At the highest level, it consumes 5 oil. We can see here. I don't have the highest tech right now, so It's just an I have the highest tech in the table setup, but you have to list it. You have to collect data according to your current tech values and change the numbers according to your tech values as well. So we can see here, the highest level of production for iron gives us, what's iron? 70 iron, and explosive gives us another 20, right? So that's 90 in total. And we just listed 5 oil consumption, 15 tools, and 10 explosives. Now I have negative 90 here set up, and I have outputs as negatives and inputs as positives. It's mostly a personal preference. You can just flip this around and it will still work, but make sure you have to be consistent. So essentially, you just list out all the production methods that you have, up to just all the industries. I have bureaucracy, transportation, and infrastructure here set up, but these are a bit more complicated and slightly more difficult to actually set up. So I do not recommend incorporating these in your first try. So just set up something simple like it just iron mining and iron mining and tools like that. So don't try to go too complicated on your first try. As you progress, you can and learn about how this works. You can start setting up stuff like infrastructure and bureaucracy. It's a bit different because it doesn't really require it. Like it doesn't really scale with food bonus, and one of the big things that you have to consider is throughput bonus, right? So that's why I don't recommend you to do it early. Also, what you have to make sure is that you only have the negative or the you only have your outputs in the diagonal row. So essentially, if you have an industry that produces two types of good, like our chemical plants, right? You have to split up. You have to split it into fertilizers and explosives. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And you will have the same outputs as well. So as you can see here, I mean inputs as well. So the 30 iron, 15 coal, like these are identical here. All right. So after you collect the raw data, you also need to take in consideration for the throughput bonus, because we do have a throughput bonus, right? So like depending on our tag, it will go up to like 50%, that kind of stuff. Our throughput bonus. So yeah, we do have to take in consideration of that, and this honestly should be a 1.7 here, because late game you will pretty much always have the plus 20 trade union throughput bonus. So 1.7, but I'm using 1.5 here. And then for the resources, that's a bit different. Since we know that most resources are capped per state, so as you can see here, in this state I only have a level 7 logging camp, and in this state I have a level 28 logging camp, level 28 code, right? So you will not be able to get maxed out resource throughput bonuses. So what do you do about that? Well, essentially I just here are resources. I have collected all the resource caps of all our capped resources, and I put them in a table. I calculate what's the actual throughput, so capped at 1.5. I sum it up, and then I get an effective cap, and then I divide the effective cap by our sum of cap, which is our actual cap. That will give us an effective throughput bonus, and I use this number for our resource throughput bonuses, which you can see here. And what do you do next? We multiply our output and inputs by our throughput. That's essentially how throughput work. You have the same amount of people, you just produce more and consume more. So we multiply everything, and then we get a table that looks something like this. Essentially just multiplied by the throughput bonus up here. This table just multiplied by this row. How I did it here is that I anchored the column of the throughput bonus, so when I drag it around and copy it around, it will not move, so I can just copy the entire row and column down, and it will still work. Cool, right? Now, the next step we need to do, which gets into the more complicated territory, is that we have to start utilizing matrices, the matrices functions of Excel. So now we have to, and honestly, I do not know why does this work. I heard about matrices. I have learned a bit about matrices in school. However, I have completely forgotten about it, and I have no idea how does this work. If you know how this works, if you know what's the mathematical theory behind it, feel free to post them in the comments and explain it. I will ping it honestly. Like if you can give me a good explanation, I will ping it. Like I am actually curious why does this work. Okay, so we have this matrix C. And we have essentially the table up here, right? Now we just take the matrix inverse of it, which will give us this weird looking table. Don't fret just yet. This weird looking table will turn into something. So we have the inverse set up, and now we need to set up a table where we essentially it tells us how much of something we are lacking. So what I did here is since I work with this table a lot, I have to drag it around, right? What I did is I set up an if function, and then I say if something is greater than 0, then make it 0. I mean, if the value here is greater than 0, then make it 0. If the value here is not greater than equal to 0, then make it this value. If you are doing it a bit simpler, you can. If you want a simpler method, you can just fill in the tape. You can just copy and paste 0 onto this entire thing. Oh shoot, whatever. You can just make a table entirely made out of 0, which is of the same columns and rows, the number of columns and rows, and you fill in the diagonals with how many goods you actually want. So you just say, oh, I want like 787 wood, right? I just input 787 here, or negative 787. If you did like me and you made the outputs negative, you just input negative 787, which yeah, this table isn't really complicated. However, I think this is a special type of matrix that looks like this. However, I do not know what types of matrix is that. So yeah, after that, what we do is we just do a matrix multiply. We multiply this matrix, the matrix inverse we got from up here, by this matrix, the matrix inverse we got down here. And that will give us, well, our actual required production if we want to build something. Like if I want to build 10,000 units of glass. 10,000 units of glass, right? I will need to build 44 glassworks, and oh, by the way, since we split fertilizers and chem plants, right? Now we need to also take note that our fertilizers and oh wait, this is grain. This is not glass. This is glass. Okay, I read it wrong. So since we split fertilizers and chem plants, right? We need to take note that when we have two values for the same type of industry, like we have 9 fertilizers and 5.8 explosive, we do not build a total of 14 chem plants. We build a higher number. We build 9 chem plants. We do not build the sum. We build a max. We build a higher number. We just take the top. So that's what you do when you have multiple outputs in one industry. And also do take note that I used synthetic dye here, so that's why I have a lot of fertilizer requirement. You can use normal dye as well. So like you can use the dye plantations as well. So just to switch between dye plantations and synthetic dye, you just copy over the column that you have here, which tells us, oh, how much resources is required, and which tells us what other industries will need from this resource, and then you just copy over here, easy. But I actually prefer synthetic dye because it's more resource efficient. We'll go over that concept in a later video, but this is a concept called resource efficiency, where since sulfur doesn't really get used up all that much, it's actually you can achieve a bit higher GDP by using synthetic dye. But that's another video. Like we are not gonna be going into it too deep here. So we built 27 synthetic dyes, 9 chem plants, and 2 steel, 11 tools, engines, electricity. Like this table will not be 100. Like this table is 100% accurate, but due to the decimals, you cannot be 100% accurate in game. So, however, the bigger your economy grows, the more accurate this will be. And also, you can use this for construction sectors as well. So what I essentially did here is I just put in construction sectors -1. So this is how much resource one construction sector will require. And we can see here, this is the highest production method, arc welder construction, by the way. 50 glass, 20 explosives, 90 steel, 40 iron, 40 tools, and 40 electricity. And then we can see if I want to build, let's make it a bit lower, 100 construction sectors using arc welded. We need 77 steel, 56 coal, 16 lead, and blah 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 blah. This table will just tell you everything that you need to know, like how many resources, how many industries of each type you need to build. Super convenient, and it essentially lets you play Excel, Victoria on Excel. Because if you actually use this table to the max, like you make sure that everything you do is in accordance with this table, you will not have any kind of imbalances of goods in your, like all your prices will be at base price. And again, base price is the best state of economy that you want, because any kind of overpricing or underpricing will actually decrease your GDP due to how the pricing formula works. It's like the 0.7 cap on the prices. So that's why you actually want to make sure that well, your prices are all evened out and at base. For your industrial goods, of course. For your consumer goods, they will never be equal. Like you can never build enough luxuries. That's just how the game works. You will always have more money going into your economy than it will produce. So, like the amount of money you have will always be greater. Like the amount of money that exists due to subsistence output, due to what's the last one, dependent income, and also efficiency will always be greater than the actual production you can ever have. But you can achieve a super balanced industrial goods. Like consumer goods, it's not gonna be balanced, but industrial goods, it's actually easy to balance. The reason it's not 100% balanced here because it's actually a bit difficult using that table. Like, I have to modify all the values every time my tech increases. So, like, it does take a bit of effort, and yeah. However, if you are really into the efficient building thing, that's great. And also another reason why it's not balanced in my playthrough right now is because I have a couple puppets here. Like I have, I think Japan is still my puppet. Yeah, Japan is still my puppet. America is also my puppet, and they don't tend to build things according to, like, they do not try to make sure the prices are all evened out. They just build whatever gives them the most money. That's how they build. So yeah, that's essentially that. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to post them in the comment section. And if you can explain why does this even work, that's even better. And by the way, I have a lot of extra stuff set up here, like I have value added, I have construction cost set up, I have margin set up. The reason I have all these set up is because I want to calculate, because I'm doing a lot of calculations on resource efficiency, construction efficiency, what gives us the most value bang for the buck when we are building stuff. That's why I have a lot of other value stuff up here. But in your Excel, you do not have to set up all this stuff. It's not required 100%. Alright, that's pretty much that. Bye bye.